Hello, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Focus Friday here on June the 7th, 2024. In this week's podcast, I will be covering the following items. One, I'm going to talk about an update on crop progress across Michigan. Two, going to give you some agronomic lessons from service calls across the state, including a black cutworm update, a slug update, and even some sulfur thoughts for side dressing. And I have a special guest from Canada with us to discuss soybean flowering. So let's get started on crop progress. It is kind of variable across the state, but mainly pretty good. Most of the early corn is pushing V4, V5, with some folks still putting corn in the ground. According to the GHX app, the corn planted May the 1st in central Michigan should have picked up 469 heat units. That's going to put it firmly at a V4 growth stage. And for the most part, the color and uniformity of the corn crop looks very good. The usual problem areas are showing up, including kind of those clay knob hills where the soils might not have been properly fit, or the planter just rode up out of the ground a little bit, leaving some seed shallower than was really needed to get good germination. Soybeans are a little more variable. Road beans are looking better than the drilled beans, and though we have some early beans pushing that V3 plus, most what I'm seeing is not quite that far along. Now we're only 2 weeks, of course, away from summer solstice, so the vegetative growth is in full swing right now. Rain this week was scattered. Reports of a half an inch here at my place in mid-Michigan to inch and 3/4 down by Jackson, and honestly over 4 inches of rain in the far northeast part of the thumb was reported Wednesday evening. They're in a little tougher shape than the rest of us. So temperatures, though, were way above average this week. In fact, high enough to create some rapid growth syndrome in some corn near Lowell I was looking at. But things look to be cooling down this next week. So moving into service calls for this week, I've gotten certainly a number of reports on black cutworm across the state. Now, the threshold for spraying is 3 to 5% cut plants and 2 or more larvae that are what they call 4th to 6th instar growth stage, and that's found in 100 plants. And we want to do that across multiple places of the field, of course. And we've seen some cutting above the ground, and that's really more cosmetic in nature. But if they've been cutting below the ground and potentially below the growing point, which they do tend to do a little bit more in this hot weather, then these fields really need to be scouted and evaluated for spraying before replant becomes our only option in those fields. The first fields, of course, to scout are those that were green, had green material in them in April when those moths were flying in from the south and laying their eggs. So I've also seen some slug feeding in mainly no-till corn and soybean fields where it's kind of been wet. The plants have been a little slow growing. The good news is most of this damage has been cosmetic, but if it becomes an annual problem on your farm, give me a call. We'll talk through a few management strategies there. Also, with side dress season upon us very quickly, let's not forget to be including the sulfur in with our nitrogen program. Most folks agree today that 1 to 2 pounds of sulfur for every 10 pounds of nitrogen is a good place to start when applying these truly key nutrients. Now, finally today, I have with me my good friend and colleague from Ontario, Matt Hoyer. He and I have worked together for years, and he is our soybean product placement scientist for the northern soybean varieties. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Charles. Glad to be here. And yes, we have worked together for quite some time.
Well, really going to enjoy having your insights here today. And let's focus in on flowering in soybeans today. And let's just get a refresher to my listeners on maybe you taking a minute to explain more about the flowering process in soybeans and truly why it's important to overall yield.
Absolutely. So let's start off with timing. So flowering generally starts around summer solstice, but can begin earlier than June 21st. And that flowering can continue to up to 2 months. So quite a time span and duration that flowering can continue across the season. But it's also important to note that this is also variety dependent. So, two things just to think about with respect to flowering time. Soybeans are day length sensitive, which means they respond to day length, also known as, you've probably heard the term photoperiod, meaning that they begin their reproductive stage when the nights become longer than the days. This is also known as summer solstice. So this is different for each variety. And that's why at Syngenta, we breed soybeans for each maturity group so that it's adapted to maximize its yield potential for those specific regions. So important depending on which region you are and which maturity you are. So you've probably seen this in the past. If you grow a shorter season variety, you'll notice that it will flower faster. And when we say flower faster, it means that the duration of flowering will be shorter. Plus, you'll get less vegetative growth, meaning less nodes, less flowers, and then ultimately less yield. Now, there's a secondary thing that determines flowering time, and that is temperature. So, temperature is also a key driving factor in flowering time. So, when we do get warmer temperatures, we get more vegetative growth, meaning more nodes on the plants, resulting again in more flowers and thus more pods and ultimately more yield at the end of the season. So I just wanted to kind of review here some additional fun facts about the flower of soybean itself. So the flower in the soybean plants can be produced on all the stems and branch nodes. The number of flowers is highly influenced by the amount of branching. So reason why we might be seeing some things perhaps recently with interest in rolling soybeans and mowing soybeans to induce more of that branching. When it comes to the structure of the soybean flower itself, the flower ensures that 98% of soybean pods result from self-pollination. So that's highly accurate amount of pollination that occurs there, which produces about 2 to 3 times more flowers than there will be pods at harvest. So a lot of flowers get fertilized, but over the next few weeks will abort for various reasons. So even if we get the perfect rainfall, perfect conditions, we can see up to 50% of flowers aborted after they have been fully fertilized. So that's important to keep in mind as well there too. So as we get into those next few weeks there, then during the seed development, R4, which is beginning seed fill, seeds require a steady flow of water, carbohydrates, and nutrients. So any stress, Charles, may increase the rate of seed abortion. That's why the saying goes, August rains make grain, because August rains occurred in that key critical growth stage. So what can we do as growers? We can't control the weather, but what we can do is limit that stress during that time period. So we want to avoid anything that increases stress. So this could include things like a herbicide application. So we want to avoid spraying some herbicides during that R1 and up to the reproductive stages. Additionally, a lot of growers are doing this as well too, is putting on a fungicide application. So we want to manage disease, which causes stress as well. And then finally, we want to make sure that there's those key nutrients are readily available at that key time. And so that could be a foliar fertilizer application if needed. And then finally, how do we maximize that yield potential with respect to flowering? So finally, one of the key ways to achieving top end yields is planting early. And I mean, there has been a lot of talk, a lot of data here to support the early planting of soybeans, and that makes sense. This allows the soybean the opportunity to put more nodes on each plant by increasing the vegetative growth. So again, here you'll say me this over and over: more nodes lead to more flowers, lead to more pods, and then ultimately lead to more yield, which, yeah, is no surprise. Additionally, you'll also notice if you plant early, that even you can have flowering even that much earlier, which again adds to the extra yield opportunity.
Well, that's certainly something we're seeing here in Michigan with all kinds of earlier soybean planting, and guys have been successful with it. So we're happy to see that when the soils and the weather allow. Our second question is really curious along this whole line of flowering is what is Syngenta doing with respect to flowering timing and development of soybeans?
Right on. So great question. Yeah, we are doing some work with respect to flowering time. So I was talking to Jake Delheimer, who is our breeder out of our Glidden, Minnesota location. So there's a lot of talk about gene editing, and we won't get into that today, but very much so, we're in the early stages of evaluating the use of gene editing to move around that flowering time. So you think about, Charles, you think about your top performing variety, and I know you already got a variety in mind here. So back in the day, you say you had one of your absolute favorite varieties, which was top performing line with second to none white mold. Generally, when we use that top performing line and we bring it back in the breeding program, the progeny are within a narrow band. So the children of that cross from that top performing line are within a narrow band. So you get a spread of plus or minus 2 days. With gene editing, what's cool, we may be able to bring into other maturities. So you could have an early group 2 maturity, top performing variety background, and bring that into a group 3 maturity. So with great white mold. So, I mean, it's a win-win. Wouldn't that be great?
It's exciting, the gene editing there. It's just crazy what's been done already and what is yet to come. I'm sure we're only at the cusp of where we're going with that. To wrap things up here, finally, I'm just curious, what are you looking most forward to in the near term with research and development?
Absolutely. So, my favorite time of year, getting out in the field, seeing our new experimental varieties out there. We know that our current 2.2 maturity variety has been a very successful bean. So in our 2024 stage 6 class, so you know the terminology, Charles, but this is the year before you would run in your plots. We have essentially 3 experimentals with that variety, so that top performing variety genetics in the background at a 2.3, 2.5, and 2.8. So knowing what we know about performance of that key lead product, I'm excited because that could potentially be a great add to the already strong soybean portfolio.
Well, Matt, and we really appreciate all the work that you and your team do behind the scenes to continue to bring out some exciting soybean genetics. I know our customers really appreciate not only the offensive yield potential, but also that defensive protection against a lot of those challenges and diseases that do tend to take yield away every year. So appreciate your time today. And folks, this is Charles Scoville, your Golden Harvest agronomist with your Focus Friday. Have a great weekend.